Hey, if everyone's here to learn about boundaries, you're in the right place. We're going to get started here. So, teaching healthy boundaries by modeling them, and how, to someone else's earlier question, how this can set them up to start building the foundation of healthy relationships with other people. I'd like to tell you a story about my issues with boundaries first. A few years ago, my sister was putting on a birthday party for me, and I was up in the mountains, and she should have been an event planner because she pays attention to all the details. All I had to do was show up. I thought it would be a great idea to go kayaking right before I go, and I thought if everything goes smoothly, I'll have enough time, I'll get to my party on time, it'll be great. As soon as I get across the lake, I get swarmed by mosquitoes, which makes me really rush to put the kayak in the car in a haphazard way. So as I'm driving, it falls out of the car, and then we hit traffic, and I forgot to fill my gas tank. All this to say is I was disappointed in my sister, and I was late to my own birthday party, and I failed at the boundary of keeping time. But I was able to look at her in the face and say, I'm so sorry, I love you, I won't do this again. And just the acknowledgement that a boundary was crossed and I do respect her, let us still have a great time. So we're not always gonna do boundaries well, but it's about acknowledging them and restoring them once they're broke. So I'm a licensed clinical social worker and certified sex therapist and supervisor. So most of my days are talking about boundaries and desires. So hopefully this will translate. Specifically, I work with men who have out of control sexual behavior, also known as porn addiction or sex addiction. So hypersexuality is my wheelhouse, and how to understand it, manage it, and have healthier sexuality and relationships is going to be talked about. Also groups. I run a lot of groups, and when you are in a community of people who are all working towards keeping agreements and maintaining boundaries, or being really honest and open when a boundary was broken and what the consequences were without shame, it does amazing, very cool things. I'd love to hear a little bit from you guys. Does anyone have anything that, like a boundary that they really held strongly in their family that's easy to hold, or something that's really hard that you'd love a little help with? Anyone willing to share? That's fine, we'll get into it. By show of hands, how many of you have kiddos who are 0 to 5? Awesome, okay. 6 to 12? Thank you. And how about 13 to 18? Awesome. And anyone above 18? Okay, we have a mixed bag. So the conversations will look different in each age group, but the same formula still applies. So for today, we're just going to go over boundaries, what they are, how I think of them, what the anatomy of them are, and then at the bottom of boundaries is values. What is important to you? What is the thing that you're protecting with these boundaries? In terms of relationship and sex, we can go specifically into that. And then I have some fun tools that I'll be showing you. If there's brave volunteers, it's a very easy exercise, and if no one volunteers, I'll pick on Crystal. You'll do it with me. And then we'll do a reflection and Q&A. Although Q&A can happen at any point, so if you have a burning question, feel free to raise your hand and I'm happy to talk with you. So first, what are boundaries? As I was driving here, I was thinking, oh, even my lanes are boundaries, so it's not all cattywampus and people drive into each other. Our skin is a boundary. It keeps our organs inside. As far as relational boundaries, it's the behaviors and the things that you find, they protect what you find acceptable and not acceptable, and they help create safety. So if you're a lack of boundaries, if you have very porous boundaries, the door to your home is wide open so anyone can come in uninvited, and that doesn't feel good. On the other hand, too rigid of boundaries is like having a moat around you and you can't connect to anybody. So there's a sweet spot of knowing where you end and someone else begins, and how to communicate that. I like to think of boundaries, the in order to set a good boundary, you have to know what's important to you first. So what are your values? That's a fancy word for just saying, what do you look for or avoid in other people that makes you feel either really awful or really safe and good? What brings you towards someone and what creates distance? So if the values are the roots, the boundaries are the branches that are seen and explained. And that's what your kiddos are going to see modeled. What is okay, what is not okay. But even having that discussion early and often about what is important in our family, I'll have an exercise for that. So the values, like I said, are what is worth protecting in your family, whether it's privacy, whether it's having your attention at the dinner table, whether it's honesty, being truthful. As a sexual health educator and therapist, I love the World Health Organization of sexual health. I just plucked all these things from that definition, and there's this idea of freedom to and freedom from. The freedom to respect, which means freedom from disrespect or crossing boundaries. Freedom to trust, freedom from distrust or secrecy. These are all things that are really good building blocks if you're not quite sure what your values are. Freedom to safety, open communication, equality, and support. In OCSB, there's these 6 principles of sexual health that are guiding principles. It's pleasure, mutual values, honesty, non-coercion, and non-exploitation. I'm forgetting the last one, but they're all great. But it is incompatible to be out of control with your sexuality if you are in alignment with these 6 principles. So having that clarity can just help you feel more confident and clear with what boundaries you set. So there is an exercise I do with clients around a value card sort. I highly recommend it. I know you can't really click on this slide, but if you're interested in this, I can send this to you. It's a great exercise of going in your family, printing out all these different boundaries and seeing what's really important, what's kind of important. Oh, Lucy knows this exercise. And what's not important at all. And it's not just about naming them, but seeing them in action. So does anyone know a real core value, something so important to your family that you are rocking it? In mine, it's kindness. So even if we're upset with each other, we don't yell at each other. We try not to. If we do, there's a timeout. So trying to be really kind and patient is important. One value that's in progress for my family is screen time. Being present and available in the here and now is really lovely. And it's so easy to let screen time go over because it's an easy regulator and it's entertaining. So just knowing what your values, what's important for you, and then what does it look like? Kind of like the example I just said. It's knowing if honesty is important, but honesty about what? So I'm gonna be really truthful about what went well and what didn't. Now these are great, kind of like the sex talk. You don't just do it once when they hit puberty. You try and build a foundation of early and often. There's little moments all throughout the day to show what is important and what is not important. And boundaries are kind of hard. They're simple, but they're not easy. Common feelings, it's guilt for saying no to your kiddo when they really, 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 really want something and they're about to have a meltdown. It's hard. It'd almost be easier to cave on a boundary. Fear of guilt or conflict or distance. If I say no to you, will you love me less? Concern about others' opinions, that maybe not applies here as much. And then be very careful as boundary as a punishment. So before someone crosses a boundary, making that boundary known rather than you do this because of that. Say, no, this is really important because we're trying to protect safety. We're trying to protect kindness. And they're awkward and messy. So what ways to overcome them are, again, going back to what's important. What are you protecting? If it's hard to figure out, oh God, I don't want to set this boundary, it'd be easier in the moment not to, but big picture, what is the vision? In that, for my OCSB groups, the last column is your vision of sexual health. Is the reason why we set the boundaries. Okay, we're not gonna cross these boundaries, even though sometimes it's fun, even though it's really tempting, because the bigger picture is this vision. Again, early and often, it's easier to do this little by little in bite-sized moments, plus you're gonna have lots of opportunities. Tuck and roll, I think this is really important. Restore your boundaries. Like, I've broken so many boundaries in my family. I learned the hard way, I've hurt people, and rather than just giving up and going into a shame cycle, own it and move forward, but we learn from it. The worst thing you can do is avoid it. Avoiding it is just, ugh. And then be kind to yourself. You're gonna lose your temper. You guys are here, you obviously care so much about your kids. You're doing everything you can to create amazing, safe, healthy, happy kiddos. It's okay, it's gonna not always be perfect, and lean on other people. This goes into consent. So there's boundaries that are what separates me from you, and the consent is this bridge between. And it's a permission-based. So say me and Lucy, we just met, so we're two separate people, but I asked, hey, can we have a hug? And it was like an enthusiastic yes. I was provided this bridge to connect. So consent comes in all different ways. We hear about it mostly with sexuality. There's a really great video. I didn't know if we would have time to play it, but it's called Consent and Tea. Has anyone ever seen that? Yes. Oh, it's so good. It's really simple. It makes consent really obvious. But just quickly, consent's freely given. It's informed, meaning what are the parameters? I completely blew past consent with my sister. I didn't call her and say, hey, Savannah, I'm gonna go on a little kayak ride. Why? Because I thought she would say no to me. So one of the reasons people don't ask for consent is they're worried about receiving a no. Hey, Jason. It's specific. What am I actually asking for? And it's reversible. Maybe earlier in this conference, Lucy said, yeah, you can have a hug. And now, does that mean I can hug Lucy anytime I see her? No, I get to ask over and over again. And it's mutual. Both parties agree willingly. So this is where we get to play, brave souls. So this is a practice that I think would be great. I use this more in couples work, but it's also really helpful just for giving and receiving yeses and nos, and also making very specific requests. It's called the may I will you. So that it's two people, and one person does the requesting. So may I, will you, and there's 3 rounds. The first round, no matter what the person who's receiving the request wants, they just say no, even if they want to say yes. And the second round, the person receiving the request says yes, even if they really don't want it. And then the third round is taking a beat and really authentically thinking, would I want to do that? Is that a yes or a no? And it's just a way of practicing, because giving no's and receiving no's are probably one of the harder things we do. So would anyone want to try this? Yes, I see someone saying yes. So the first round is no matter what, you say no. Okay, so who wants to volunteer? Thank you. What's your name? Mike? Hey, Mike. Mike, do you and your family want to go on an all-inclusive paid trip to Paris? Do you want to shave your beard? Do you want, don't worry, I'll only do a few more. May I should have prepared these questions beforehand, but may I come meet your whole family? Oh, and I forgot to tell audience members, just pay attention to what it feels like in your body when you just hear the no's, and you might, there's nuance there. So thank you. Do you want to do the second round also? Okay. So this, sassy. You know, I practiced this with my sister, and she did the same thing. So this time it's only yeses, even if it feels gross to say yes. So, Mike, can I shave your beard? Mike, will you leave the conference early? Will you move to Antarctica? Okay. Silly questions, but it's just a practice. You might, if you do this with your family, you'd want to maybe have a fun round and then a real round of what you might actually make requests for. And then this last version is the real, like being as authentic as possible. Do you want to try it with someone you know? Like this, like you guys? All right, so you just think of like two questions that are innocent-ish, and I'm volunteering you. Will you give an honest yes or no? And the thing about this, if it could be a yes, but you don't have enough information to know whether or not it is a yes, it's a no. Okay? You're saying whatever is true for you.
Do you like the Steelers?
No.
Oh, sorry, here's the format. May I, and, sorry, what do you? Too loud? Okay. So the format is may I, like can I do something to, like, or will you? Will you do something with, like, will you go to the Steelers game with me?
She'll say no unless it's the Philly game too.
I know. So just maybe one or two more questions if you're willing.
Will you drive me to the airport?
No. I need to get my own ride.
Perfect. One more?
Will you walk down to Target and give me some beer?
No.
So how was that, if you guys wouldn't mind?
I get very easy questions.
Right, low stakes. But can you think of situations where this practice might be really good for, again, you don't have to participate anymore. Thank you so much. I appreciate you. Thinking about doing this exercise, whether it's with someone like me, if you have a specific issue where a boundary is being violated. For example, in Lucy's talk, it brought up, oh man, where is it okay and not okay to masturbate? At what age is masturbation okay? Who can we invite into the thing of math? So this exercise might be one little tool of building that foundation early and often on a subject that's really can be awkward, but if you get a sex therapist, we talk about it all day and we're unshockable. You as parents, Crystal was like, there's two talks that need to happen, one about boundaries in relationship and another one about self-care. And I think self-care for you is just as important as the boundaries. So you as the parents, taking care of yourself and putting your own oxygen mask on first before you do your kiddos is important. It's hard to fill from an empty cup. Setting boundaries is hard, it's exhausting, it takes a lot of practice, and just to be gentle with yourselves. So usually when people land in my office, it's because they thought self-care was like a nice little luxury thing that happened. No, it's essential. There's ways that you have to take care of yourself every day. Set aside time for an activity that you enjoy, and this is where you can practice boundaries around pleasure. There's boundaries around what you don't want and things that you do want. So how do you protect your alone time, whether it's just a cup of tea, it's a little walk, maybe it's going to the bathroom without being interrupted, all of these things. So just being really clear with how do you fill yourself up so that when you do set a boundary, it's coming from a place that's low activation, a little bit calmer, and you can deliver it in a much more regulated way. I don't know, I know mindfulness is a buzzword, but it's really good for you. Just being calm, even if it's laying on the floor with something over your eyes and trying not to think. Again, this conference is amazing so that you know that you're not alone in this, connecting with other people. And so my challenge, if you're willing, what is something that you would be willing to commit to yourself so that you can model what healthy boundaries are for your kids and also take really good care of yourself? What are you willing to do after today that would set a boundary around something that's important for you to keep yourself well? And if you want, email me what you're gonna do, and I'd love to hear from you. Again, helpful reminders, just like this sex talk, where you wanna do it early and often. Consistency is key. So boundaries are hard to set, but reiterating them over and over, even having visuals. Like if you know what your values are, you can put them in really beautiful colors somewhere on the house, and then what do they look like in action? And then when you're inconsistent, that's okay, be kind to yourself. You're human, we all do these things. Curiosity fosters connection, so rather than going with, no, that's not okay, getting really curious with, so what happened there? What was the interesting part of crossing that boundary, if you're talking to your kiddo? And hopefully they can take this to other relationships where they're like, if their boundary gets crossed, they can say, so you know that I had to be home by this certain time, and you were my ride. What went on there? So they can start advocating for themselves as you have these conversations with them of how to discuss this. And celebrate wins. When there is a boundary that was respected, or like, oh, mom, dad, this is that value we talked about. I did it. Say, yes, that is awesome. And you reinforce that great, and with yourself too. Reinforce, hey, did you see you went to bed on time and you woke up all fresh and happy? That's because we respected the boundary of our bedtime. Or when you floop like I did with my birthday, it's okay to own it too. Say, oh, I lost my temper. I crossed the boundary of being calm and considerate. Let's talk about how that felt and how we can do it better next time. So you just become an askable parent. Nothing is off the table. And give yourself permission, again, to have that conversation when you've regulated and you're back in your window of tolerance. And just remember that behind every no, there's a protected yes. So no's might feel confronting and yucky. And I mean, thank you for I don't know how it felt to receive no's, not a big deal, but I know that when someone gives me a no when I really want something, it takes me a moment to just accept it and be like, okay, thank you for taking very good care of yourself, even though, or you can blow past it. But just really remembering, what are you saying yes to when you're saying no? When I'm saying no, you can't have another scoop of ice cream, well, because I really don't want you to get sick and have a tummy ache, or whatever. What are you saying yes to? Your health. So I would love to hear from you guys. Would you be willing, what's a boundary you'd love to set for yourself that you haven't necessarily set, or you do set and it just needs a little bit more love and attention? Yes. So how would you set a boundary around that? there's the physical piece, yes. Well, knowing what you want is 90% of getting what you want, right?
It's special with our kids because they focus on one thing nonstop. You know, he goes by the credo, man never got anything he didn't ask for 1,000 times. So it's hard for us as parents with dealing with that.
Yeah. So what do you do when you're asked for like the 10th, 20th, 30th time?
We do. Just shut up. Yeah. I don't know.
I'm hearing it, but you can't have it. And that piece, just in my recent experience, I started trying it. It actually works. Where it's like, it's almost like he's anxious that I'm not hearing it, I'm not paying attention, I'm not engaging it. And that piece has had great success.
Similar. I say, I know you've asked. My answer stays the same. I love you too much to keep flip-flopping. And a lot of times that will stop it unless he is really worked up and anxious about something. But if it's something that it's more of just like a want or desire and he just keeps asking, that will usually shut it down.
Oh, a second choice, so it feels like you have options, rather than just saying, I was like, well, there's this other thing that you can do. So I love that. That's a way of getting creative. How do you outsmart the situation, the loop? I also love that idea of meet them where they're at. Okay, no, I get you really want that. And like meet them there, be with them in that, but still staying strong. And just know that it's hard. It's hard. There wouldn't be a talk on this if it wasn't hard. So I think workshops are usually done best if you think about, okay, what are your things you want to take away from this? What would be the most helpful values that you want to identify in your family? What are the boundaries? And then what might you want to use the may I, will you activity with? And then I left a big amount of time for Q&A. So anyone have any questions?